For decades, environmentalists have worried that fracking may catastrophically contaminate groundwater, which serves as the drinking water source for millions of Americans. How might such a catastrophe occur? And what does the law do to protect us against such a disaster? How might the law change to better protect groundwater in this regard? Hi, this is James Richardson, here to discuss the law in the United States as it pertains to fracking and its ramifications on the viability of groundwater as drinking water. Let's get into it. Fracking is an oil and gas production strategy whereby mixes of water, proppant, and chemicals are injected into underground rock. These mixtures, known as frac fluids, often contain toxic chemicals. Upon the completion of a well, much of the fluid used during the fracking process remains underground, never to be seen from again. That is, unless it makes its way to a nearby water table. After drilling is complete, some of the highly toxic fluid makes its way back to the surface in the form of wastewater, where it must be captured and disposed of. Oftentimes, this involves pumping the water to storage ponds where, again, it may settle into groundwater and adversely affect the drinking water of unsuspecting Americans. Unsurprisingly, fracking has been subject to regulation for quite some time, but precisely who gets to regulate the industry is the issue at the heart of my paper. The easy assumption is that federal statutes, such as the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act, would play a role in governing fracking. That easy assumption is wrong. Due to skyrocketing energy costs at the turn of the century, Congress wrote exemptions into its 2005 Energy Policy Act that expressly exempt fracking from federal regulation. The result is that states now get to do their best, and, I add parenthetically, sometimes worst, to regulate this industry. States have taken this authority and ran every which way with it. Some states have outright banned fracking altogether. Most states allow fracking, but statutorily require varying levels of disclosure of the ingredients used in frac fluids. Colorado, for example, is the strictest, requiring names of ingredients, their concentrations, and their functions. Louisiana, at the other end of the spectrum, requires only that companies disclose the names and concentrations of chemicals that are deemed dangerous under the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Federalism is also on display when it comes to the storage and transport of wastewater. States must regulate for themselves in these arenas because, under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, oil and gas wastes are considered non-hazardous. As one might expect, states have seized this power in widely different ways. All of this means that the current state of the law with regard to fracking leaves much to be desired in the way of uniformity. Uniform, stringent laws with regard to transportation and storage of wastewater would serve to minimize the likelihood of water contamination. And, where contamination does occur, as it has in places like Pavilion, Wyoming, uniform chemical disclosure laws would ensure the best possible response to such disasters. Fracking has largely remained a partisan issue, meaning that gridlock will likely impede the appropriate federal legislation that could rectify the concerns that I have expressed, at least for the foreseeable future. I would recommend that industry self-impose more stringent regulations in order to both limit the possibility of harm and to improve the likelihood that drinking water catastrophes be rectified appropriately and swiftly. Doing so might shield the industry from negative public opinion that would further threaten the continued practice of fracking. Nevertheless, all of the unfounded optimism in the world is insufficient to think that companies would willingly abide by their own impositions. The solutions to these concerns, therefore, is sure to be a creative one. Stay tuned to a Canvas page near you, or on January 3rd, you can read my riveting paper for all of the details.